Oh, she made it. Awesome. Proud of her. There you are.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey.
hey, Mary.
Hey,
glad
guys.
glad you made it.
Happy Sunday.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
Right.
Now we're in business.
Now our Jonah Arc is here. Yay.
Yeah. No hat today.
Hi, Mr. Bones. How are you? Yeah. So, welcome. Happy Sunday to everybody. Welcome to our new edition of the IFC Midnight Knights. I'm Patrick. And there's Mary. And there's Ben from Cadaver Club. There's our good friend Mike from American Werewolf in New Jersey. This is his debut show for the IFC Knights. So we're welcoming him in. And our other wayward knight, Sir David, well, he'll be joining us as soon as he can. He might be a little late. So, yeah. How is everybody doing this Sunday?
All good in the hood.
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, well, I'm just, my Sunday was pretty cool, and then it got a little better. I saw some cool art, so I'm tickled. I'm jazzed up. I'm ready to go. The movie. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I avoided mowing the lawn another day, so that's always good.
Yeah, they actually didn't want us to mow our lawn in my neighborhood. They asked us not to mow in May. No mow in May.
Really?
But we've had rain, so unfortunately we had to get out there and mow our grass. So tonight's movie that we'll be talking about, and we will put this out for a trigger warning if you're uncomfortable with certain scenes in movies, assaults or whatnot. This movie has it, and we will be talking about it. So if you are sensitive to that, we understand if you want to step out for any sort of time. We're not going to dwell on it necessarily, but we will be talking about it. And the movie we're covering today is 2018's The Nightingale. And The Nightingale was written and directed by Jennifer Kent, who many horror fans might remember, who gave us the Babadook with that screaming kid.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a IFC Films release, not necessarily an IFC Midnight film, but we cover both sides of their movies. And so for first impressions, I will say this. I'll let I'm going to let you speak for yourself, Mary, but I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, it was a little much. It's quite long. It's not one, but three or more. I mean, I stopped it. I couldn't watch it anymore.
And I can totally respect that.
And I don't do that with movies. I usually keep watching them. No matter what, I'll watch it. Well, except for Gutterballs.
Did you at least get to the scene in Gutterballs where the dude kills the couple by smothering them on each other's genitals for the love of God?
What?
No.
You just told me everything I need to know about that movie. Okay.
Yeah, what
and that I'm not going to fucking watch it. Yeah, okay.
Gutterballs is pretty extreme.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, for me, the extreme would be, like watching a Seth Rogen movie. That's beyond. I can't watch that. It's just too much assault on my senses. But that's just me. Ben, what did you think?
Well, this was my second viewing of it, and yeah, I mean, it's a good film. I liked it the first time I saw it, and I liked it again this time. I think it's at its heart sort of like it's a couple different sort of genres mashed up, but I think the core of it is a revenge story, right? But you also have sort of like a buddy story going on there, and so I think it has to be. It's a fine line between, you don't want it to be so heinous the act that causes the revenge to be so heinous that it turns the audience off, but you want it to be bad enough that they, there's a payoff when there's the revenge. But I thought they did a good job of walking that line, to be honest.
Yeah, that's it's one of the. Go ahead, Mike. I'll let you go.
For me, it's similar to what Ben said. This is my second time seeing it. I remember one night I just couldn't sleep, so I pulled the iPad out. It's one of those things. Just pull something up, and it was on Hulu, and it's unbelievably bleak, and yet the way that it ends, which we'll get to, at that point, sort of turned it for me, especially the second time. It's rough. It's a rough movie. It doesn't flinch from anything. It doesn't imply anything, against one person or another. I thought today as I watched this of the old question that people ask, if you could go back in time and live in, some other area during some other time, what would you? And it occurs to me that no, I would stay right here. When you think about disease and warfare and how things just must have smelled, and just the brutality, and as much as we complain about things today, this is like the most affluent time in like human history. So yeah, I mean, you see things like this in movies like Braveheart and these sorts of things, and you're like, nah, no thanks, I'm good right here in my air conditioning doing my live stream, drinking my Monster Energy drink. And yeah,
when I was watching it this time around, I was wondering, because like the acts that occur in the movie, you're thinking, okay, clearly this is a sociopath, but then you also wonder like how desensitized people get living in those times. There's so much like killing and pillaging. I mean, I'm sure there's also a healthy chunk of sociopathy, but then like one of the soldiers, and we'll get to it, I'm sure when we get to it, was definitely filled with a lot of regret over like some of the shit he did, and he was like a younger dude. So you wonder, like, does everyone there start off as like a genuine human and then become like a filthy piece of shit just because they get beat down over time?
I thought something very similar, and it just seems like in that sort of environment where you're living essentially in a penal colony, like the whole country is just a penal colony, you probably won't survive with your heart on your sleeve. It's almost, you're almost like in a dog eat dog, sort of kill or be killed sort of situation, if not from your own people, then from, the Aboriginals who hate you or something like that. And, this occurred right at the onset of a huge war that occurred between the Aboriginals and the colonialists. So, maybe you had, enough love in your heart to spare for like maybe the one or two people that you were closest to. And then after that, you just kind of had to, close yourself off to everything else. It's a horrible situation. Awful.
Yeah. It's, if you're a British soldier, here you got sent to that, you got sent there. It was almost like a punishment, just as much as the many Irish, that were sent there. The Irish were pulled off their lands and shipped in mass to Australia, so the English could come in there and take their lands. And so there's, most of Australia is built on the Irish. So, watching it from that standpoint, it was like, wow, and yet at the same time, you could see how they end up, sort of like, through tragedy and tragic circumstances, the two main characters did somewhat, I wouldn't say I wouldn't know if we called them friends per se, but they were definitely warriors fighting the same cause by the end of it.
I call them friends, 100%. Personally,
do you think they? Yeah, you think so?
Yeah. I think at the end they actually found love.
I thought so too.
And then. Yeah, they sort of, Billy sorts of, or maybe they do it for each other, but then Billy, sort of frees everybody within the parameters of how much he can do. And she sings that song that my love is going to, sing a song, just after he just, sung that native anthem on the beach, and yeah. I like that ending. I liked it a lot more the second time, where it wasn't 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm just like struggling to stay awake.
So this movie, it starts off in the year 1825, and we meet the gosh, I'm totally brain. We meet our main star, Claire, and she's living with her husband Aiden and their baby, and they're living just a meager life, and then we find out that she's living in a small base or a camp where they have a small detachment of soldiers, and she's supposed to be, she's being treated as a prisoner, yet at the same time she's supposed to have been released over 3 months, and yet she wasn't being released. That was really hard that was just a really rough way to introduce the character. You already see her, she's already got one foot in the fire already. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of Braveheart, where Mel Gibson was, where William Wallace was supposed to be with his wife, but the Lord would sit there and say he had a first night rights, that where he, and it reminded me a little bit of that, what do you feel about the first when we meet Claire, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, you're sort of introduced. I mean, the thing is, like, she didn't want to be there at all. She's in a fancy dress, right? Like, and like even the people that should be like her sort of like peer group, that should be like realize she doesn't want to be there, or like that fucking bitch, thinking she's all fancy and stuff. So like she's really like getting it from all sides, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you sort of like the whole first part of the movie before the soldiers make their visit, like when we see her with the lieutenant, right? I can't remember his name, but
Hawkins.
When we see them interacting alone, you really get a sense of like her sort of helplessness and her situation, and his fucking like assholeosity, is that a word? His dickishness.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty bad.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it starts out and she's walking the tight wire. She's walking the tightrope. She's got a little bit of a life that these people have sort of allowed her to have. She's got a husband who looks like a free man, I suppose. They have a baby together, but she doesn't really have any agency. She doesn't have any control of her own life. And the people that are in control of her are just rotten. I mean, like their souls are just rotten. They're just rotten people, and they're sadistic and cruel, and dishonest, and they're like ruined by alcohol. They're like these drunk, mean, awful, people, who don't even see her, as a person. They certainly don't see her as any sort of equal, but yeah, I mean, they see her as property. So they have no regard for anything that she wants. It's a really rough look at probably one of the roughest movies I've ever seen about colonialism. And it sets the tone for that very early. You just see, just at what a vast gap there is between these prisoners like Claire and these, sort of low-level, maybe mid-level officers. It's bad. And then you've got the other officer who's sort of not in charge. He can be there to reprimand, but, it's not really having any effect because Hawkins just kind of does whatever he wants to when the minute the guy turns his back.
I got the sense that guy was sort of like evaluating him, right? He was like they're visiting short term to evaluate him, And I got the
Right.
feeling like all the soldiers that, like, you know, their behavior, how rotten they were in general, was distasteful to him and might be to, like, you know, other people as well. So, you know, it's already setting up sort of like, even in the shitty world that they're in, you're dealing with some genuine shit balls, you know, even compared to like everyone else.
Yeah, he was a step below, where everyone else was, but there was nothing that, you know, Claire could do. There was nothing that Claire or her husband could do about it.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts about that scene, Mary?
No, not really. It was rough for the poor girl. No matter what she did, they were just coming at her from every angle. Poor girl.
Yeah, I mean, that was another thing, you know, like what Mary and Ben are saying, you know, even the other Irish people were giving it to her in the neck because she's a pretty girl. So the male soldiers favor her, and that makes the other Irish women hate her too.
Yeah.
You know, so she's just got, you know, she's got no one, you know.
Yeah, she's got a husband and a very and a baby, and you know, it does seem like, you know, and you know, they had that nice dress, and yeah, it seemed like she was, you know, was being favored, but it was wasn't any favoritism that you want.
No, you'd much rather be behind the scenes scrubbing the kitchen, right, than be her.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the scene where they're at parade, you know, they're at you know, attention for inspection, and you know, and Ruse, you know, was talking to him about their uniforms, and he turned over to Hawkins, and Hawkins turns around and barks at him like, yeah, you know, those guys look like shit, but so do you, so clean your own self up, you know. And he seemed really defeated, like he didn't really have all that much power over his men, you know, like he was just there, he was just marking the days so he could get out of there.
And shit rolls downhill, and it went right to her. Every time he would get yelled at, and he'd go and take it out on her. You know.
Well, none of the soldiers had any discipline. I mean, it was hardly you know, like a professional, you know, unit, and what you would see, you know, from what you might think the British military might. I mean, I think they were deliberately showing you these guys were just fall down drunks every night. You know, they're staggering, they're dirty looking, you know, they're cruel. You know, this is the bottom of the barrel, you know, in terms of the army. And yeah, I mean, it shows, you know, and I think, you know, Ben was right. That guy is there to evaluate them, and he's not impressed with what he sees. You know, because the leaders, you know, that example comes from the top, and they see who this guy, you know, the soldiers know who that lieutenant is. You know, they know what he's about. So they're just like, you know, yeah, we're just going to get, you know, pissed drunk every night and, you know, do whatever we feel like doing.
Yeah, they knew that they knew his temper. They knew that he was supposed to be there only for a year. You know, when he himself is being evaluated, he was only supposed to be there for a year, but now he's there at 3 years. So any sort of discipline or leadership that he had, it was already beaten out of him by his post. I mean, he didn't give a rat's ass by the time this movie started. He was just barely functioning, you know, as far as the military officer goes.
He's just watching the clock.
Yes. So we do see Claire.
More time added to his. He got more time added to his thing, so it's like he was in prison himself. Just like Claire was.
Yeah.
And shit rolls downhill, so he took it out on her, right? And everyone else below him.
Sure did. Yep.
The scene where we see the scene where they bring her into the front of the officers' quarters and make her sing, and you can definitely tell that she was very Claire was totally uncomfortable. But it wasn't her first time either. That's also the thing you got the impression of, was this wasn't a first time that she's been forced to do this.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of like her designated role, right? Be there to entertain the troops with her songbird voice.
Mm. Right. you can see that she can handle like the lower level soldiers, because that one guy sticks
Yeah,
his tongue out at her. She pours the drink like all over him. She's like, "Fuck you, buddy," and I don't have to listen to your shit. But when it comes to the lieutenant, that's more than she's equipped to deal with, because he has, he could just make up some story, which we see him do several times, just to frame people for.
Right.
Right. It after the song was over, and and he walks by her, and we don't see it, but I mean, obviously there was some sort of connection, telling her to come to his office, and you can see as soon as she steps through the office that, she was on the defensive, and she was, this was not a new place for her to be, and so, it's, instantly the tension in the whole, in the movie. The tension got ratcheted up really heavy. At least for me, you're sort of the apprehension you're expecting is it's going to be, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any idea what, do you have any, did you draw any conclusions to the type of history they had when she walked inside the office?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say. Go. You go.
I was just going to say, she's clearly physically intimidated. She's clear now. You don't know if there have been, another sexual assault prior to this or whatever, but clearly she's physically uncomfortable, like being in his presence.
Yeah, you sense that, you get that sense that she's trying to walk the fine line of like sort of like protecting herself and not offending him. And he starts off perfectly polite, right? So you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure exactly where this is. I don't know how bad he is. You don't know how bad he is at that, but things escalate pretty quickly. And there's a lot of exposition there. You find out like that he's holding shit over her head, and this has been going on for a while. And even though he's giving her like a gift and stuff, like, it's just like whatever. It's not. There's no genuine, feeling there. It's just like here's a gift. I'd rather this be nice than what it's actually going to be, but it's not.
Okay. Oh, I've been totally blazing on by the chat. I better catch up. I'm not sure I'm a really good leader at this, but all right. So our chat is in here chopping up. Oh, my sister's here. My sister Rose says she's been reading about the indigenous people, the Aborigines, and the Irish and English in Australia. Yeah, that's a really interesting history that we touched upon earlier. The Irish were, they were looked at through the British eyes as equal as Aborigines. The English didn't care about either the Irish or the Aborigines. They were just there as prisoners, or for them to be taken. Yeah, it was terrible time. I thought when he came in there, he did give her the present, and you're right. I mean, at first you do think that maybe he's a decent man at first. He's very quiet, he's very soft spoken, but then when she starts mentioning, like, hey, it's been 3 months since I've supposed to have been released by now for 3 months. Her husband is released, and he's just waiting for her to get her papers, but the lieutenant won't release her because he sees her as property. In fact, that's what he says: "Is your property." And which was, another word for slave. Your property. You're a slave. And even though she hadn't done anything, even though she's supposed to be released, and he refused. And then when he got upset, at her talking back, I have a husband, I have a baby, I'm a married woman, and he just seemed to be almost in a sense jealous of that, because she had a life to go to and have. And he was doing his very best to take that away from her, to break her down in front of him. Is what the impression I got.
Right.
Yeah,
I knew he's bad right off the bat. The ladies have a sense of when it's a bad situation.
Yeah, she definitely
Yeah.
knew. She
You could
definitely,
tell.
yeah, you could tell. And I think she, obviously, I think that he had already done something like to her before, because she was saying, I now have a husband, now have a baby, I'm no longer that person that you could come in here and do this with. And and he got upset, and and he, yeah,
I think he's violently opposed to seeing her as a human being. If he has to see her as an actual person, then it's harder for him to, it's almost like that Silence of the Lambs thing, where he's got her in the well, and she's trying to relate to him, but then that the more she starts talking, the more angry he gets, and I think you have a similar thing here. He is insistent that this is not a person, this is an object, it's my property, I can do whatever I want. And the more you sort of show him something else, the more he's going to, strike out, in this case with his fists, to shut that down, because he can't.
I think that I think the act itself of what he did, when he assaults her, it's established without, obviously without beating a dead horse, but it clearly establishes that he's not stable at all. He's a violent man. He's not stable. He has no moral center. And he's used to that. Definitely, definitely unpleasant to watch, for sure. Establish him without a doubt, that he's irredeemable, and he's just a bastard. And you instantly hate the character, which is strong writing by Kent. It's like this guy here, there's nothing here for him. There's nothing good about him. Anything that has been good, like you said, have been beaten out. Not every soldier was like that, as we will see.
But you also get from that scene, because the way it starts off, where he's all like soft spoken and nice and like giving her presents and shit. You also see that though he's like a sociopath, he sort of cleans up well, right? Like you see that all throughout the movie. Like he's a genuine piece of shit, but he can sort of like polish himself up and speak real like eloquently to his higher ups and whatnot, and make his way through the world on an upward trajectory because of it.
Right.
That's sort of like psychopath, right? Psychopaths
Yeah.
sort of can endure themselves like that to people.
Yeah, exactly.
He's very manipulative, but he's also a British officer, which means he probably has some education, which makes him stand out. Between like that guy, the sergeant, that he has there, who's just he's just there to beat on people, that sort of thing.
She also knows too, in a sense, as bad and evil as he is, and he is, but she seemed a little bit more afraid of her husband's temper, because she's been saying nothing about what has been happening.
But
She's been.
I got the feeling she was only afraid of what would occur because of his temper, not because she was afraid of him as what he would do to her.
No. I think he was afraid of what her husband would do to, would rise to defend her, and that would cause him to be hurt. So I think that she just kept quiet for that. She was scared for her husband, I should say.
Yeah,
and rightfully so.
And yeah. I thought he and the husband, Aiden, he says, listen, I'm going to talk to him. And, of course, instantly she's like, don't do that because you'll lose your temper. So, again, it's like one of where it's showing that her husband has tried it before, and things have always gone slightly off. It's just been no response. And, and so she's terrified of that. She's terrified for her husband, and she doesn't want him to know what's been going on. At the same time, like, I'm going to go speak on you getting your papers because it's 3 months past. Well, I don't want you to rile it up. And then even worse is like, I don't want him to turn around and say, has your wife told you that her and I have been sleeping together? even though it's not really the case. You know, she was also afraid of that.
I didn't really get that feeling. I just got like she didn't want to stir the pot. She just wanted like to sort of bide their time and get out of there quietly if possible. And she knew that he's got a hot temper and won't think before he acts when he's dealing with the British officer. That was what I got from that.
I think she was, I think she was smarter than her husband. And she realized that even as bad as the situation was, it was the best of all their choices. There were no good choices for them.
No.
And when you see later on, once she starts to go into the woods, why running away really wasn't an option, you know, especially with a newborn baby. You know, so as bad as it was, they had shelter, they had food, you know, they were able to eke out a couple of coins, you know, once a blue moon, you know, that sort of thing. But at least they were alive.
Right.
You know, it really was like a zero-sum sort of, it's like a zero-sum kind of situation there. And she knew that if he upset that apple cart, which he ends up doing because he's drinking, you know, so he doesn't come at it rationally. When he does go at it, you know, it turns into exactly what I think she was afraid of. You know, he gets drunk, his pride is wounded, and, you know, he tries to, you know, start a bar fight. You know, and she knew which way that was going to go, and that's exactly how it turned out. Even worse than I think than she figured it would turn out. But yeah,
it was funny. It's funny that it's in a way, even though we'll see in a minute what happens because of that. The husband still, even before his, you know, even before his demise necessarily, he actually planted the seeds for the lieutenant's destruction. In the fight, he you know, when they're sitting in the bar and you know they're going after it, and you know, lieutenant says what he says, and they attack, you know, they attack him in the bar. He headbutts them and whatnot, but he plants the seeds because the lieutenant is there to be evaluated for a captain's post. And while he sees that Aiden attack his soldiers and him, he hears everything. He heard the dialogue between the two about him raping his wife and him, you know, his responding to that. And that other officer was standing outside. He heard everything, and he had no respect for the lieutenant before, and even less afterwards. He says, "I'm not going to recommend you. You're not worth it."
Right.
And, you know, in doing that, you know, you know, the seeds were planted. Like I said, he now is going to have to try to, you know, because otherwise he was going to be there forever. He was going to be there. Who knows when he would have got out of there? He really did become a prisoner after the captain came in and evaluated him. He might have thought he was just waiting for a post, but after that, he was not going to get out of that. And I think that's the reason why he struck back yet again. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, well, I mean, that scene in the bar was like basically the straw that broke the camel's back on him getting the recommendation for the new post. And that's why he went like and paid them a visit later. He didn't mention anything about raping his wife though at that point.
No, not then.
So
did he I thought he had mentioned I think he mentioned it without going into too much. Yeah, he did mention it without going into too much detail. And then but he heard enough. I think he said that, you know, has your wife told you about, you know, about us?
I don't remember that. I didn't feel like he flipped that switch until
they were at the cabin.
I thought he said that when he came to their room.
Okay.
He just basically went in there and
Paid him a visit. Yeah.
It's also a sign of, oh God, I'm sorry, Ben.
No, go ahead.
It's also a sign of how bad off, you know, like this guy really is a sociopath because he doesn't see his own complicity in any of this.
Right.
he accepts zero responsibility. He can't relate to anything that any of these people are telling him. Like, Claire's telling him, the major or the captain is telling him, that man, the one ensign, or whatever, people, there's like three different, and just nothing. It just bounces right off. He doesn't see his own responsibility in any of this. It's just all someone else's fault. So
Yeah.
he has no basis in reality.
No.
He's not grounded in any kind of reality at all.
But he does go back to the house, to their little house for revenge, though.
Yeah.
Right.
You feel comfortable talking a little bit about what you thought about that scene, Mary, where they in the bar before they went to the shack? Did you have any impressions about Hawkins being denied his promotion? The captain.
You knew the guy was gonna go get revenge for not getting to get out of there. He wanted that so bad, and it got ruined. But you knew what was gonna happen after that. So
Yeah.
he will pay them a visit. Bring his crew with him.
I saw that revenge coming too. Obviously, I didn't see to the extent of the revenge.
No.
That I didn't see coming. What'd you think about when they went to inside the little house, Mike? I mean, did you expect the violence to be as it was, or did you just expect a beatdown?
No, I didn't expect all of that. The first time I saw it, I certainly did. I wouldn't even begin to understand if someone said, "Yeah, I saw all that coming." But it was, he crossed the line into like capital E kind of evil, almost like demonic. It's just that was bad. Like irredeemable kind of, acts, and you saw how the ensign got compromised, or not compromised, but who knows, maybe they would have killed him too, or anything like that. But I mean, the way that she wrote the story, everybody just goes along.
I think the ensign, I felt really bad for his character because, maybe he was new to the post or what have you, but he didn't really seem to be the person that, wanted to be where he was at. He's almost like he was like the other officer that he had. He had the sergeant, and then he had the ensign, or private first class or whatnot. And, he just happened to be there because he was ordered there. And I don't necessarily think if by himself, he wouldn't have been anywhere near that.
No. But I mean, like I contrast him with someone, and on the other side of that, I would put Charlie, who just sort of, it cost him his life, but he decides, he's going to, take a stand here. So I didn't have any sympathy for any of them. I didn't have any sympathy for the.
Oh no, especially once he, I think his character, if he had just like not touched the baby and he would have said, screw this, I'm out the door, and he would have left. If he would have left, and then maybe. But the fact that he actually did need to man up and do the right thing, but he was just too coward by the lieutenant. Hawkins just had that much control over him, and he was more scared of Hawkins than he was of his own actions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you did see though that he I mean, you clearly see that he's doesn't have the same like sociopathy as Hawkins, right? I mean, you see that distinction between the two. Like he commits a heinous act that is probably like irredeemable and like plainly evil. But you also see that he doesn't like that he did it. It's not like it just rolled off him or anything.
No, not like the sergeant. It's the difference between him and the sergeant. Yeah.
Yeah, the sergeant was just, he was just as evil as Hawkins was.
Yeah.
And he didn't even intend to kill the baby, though he killed the baby. I mean, you can't really talk about this movie tiptoeing around things, right? So like
No.
he killed the baby. But he didn't like intentionally kill it per se. You know, it wasn't like his, you know, he wasn't like intending to kill the baby, even though he clearly killed the baby.
I thought he was gonna do what I thought he was gonna do it by the same way that Hawkeye did in MASH, the final episode of MASH. You know, like keep that
Keep the
chicken
baby quiet. Right. I remember that episode.
Yeah.
They smothered the baby.
The baby. I expected that. You know, I expected that. You know, keep it quiet, keep it quiet. I expected him to accidentally kill it by smothering it. You know, I was like, okay, will that happen that way? Or you know, but no, he just turned around and whacked it. I didn't expect that.
I'll say this. I mean, Jennifer Kent, she really went for it.
Yeah.
She really did, man. I mean, she spared you nothing.
No.
You know, it was almost like some sort of, horror documentary, that you were seeing, in like these extreme cases. But I mean, these were the types of things that were happening in this area of the world at that time, British colonialism. The British used to rule the whole world, man. And I guess it was rough if if you were in one of the colony countries.
I mean, can you imagine how less powerful this movie would be if she just tiptoed around everything? I mean, I think she had to go for it. Otherwise, the movie would have failed, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of what grabs it. I mean, there's a hell of a character drive in the story for her and for Billy, and a couple of the other people. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, if it had just been implied or something like that, it wouldn't have nearly the impact. And, 30 people wouldn't have walked out of the premiere, if, she really hadn't gone right to the wall for it. She really did.
It's an interesting, like, it's an interesting area in film that I find really interesting, like this movie and a movie like Irreversible. They are, I mean, cinema is art, right? So like, it's not all going to be like beautiful and nice and stuff, but like, like as far as like me, like, do I want to watch Irreversible again? I mean, it's a distasteful movie to watch, but that's the whole point of the fucking movie. So it's just an interesting, like, it's super successful as an artistic venture, but then it's like I hated it because of how successful it was. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of like
this reminds me of that Western that is set in colonial Australia, The Proposition. Yeah, with Guy Pearce. I mean, that is just a brutal.
That's a good movie, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think Nick Cave wrote the screenplay for that.
And the score.
And the score with Warren Ellis. I mean, and that's a fantastic movie. Great cast, great story, but it is just, man, unflinching. They show everything. It's just unflinchingly brutal.
But it also not quite as brutal as this, I don't think, in a lot of respects.
Yeah, this movie this was like one of the most brutal movies I've seen in quite a while. I mean, let's put it this way. I watched Friday the 13th, the 2009 version after this.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it seemed like a
comedy.
Yeah, it seemed like a cartoon. It was a cartoon. It was just like
it is a cartoon. But
yeah, I'm gonna watch a horror movie after this. Oh, this is not horror what I'm watching. I just got done watching horror, and that's horror. I mean, even though this is a period revenge piece, but this very much is a horror film. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, yeah.
I'm going to assume that no one here is, 21 yet or 21. But I mean, at this age that I've gotten to, what people are doing are far more scary than, most supernatural movies that I see. The actions of people. Those are the scariest movies for me nowadays. When I was younger, it was, vampires and werewolves and, I guess serial killers or whatever. But for now, it's much scary watching something like this or Zodiac or that the Mind Hunter on Netflix or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like the true horrors of the world are what's scary, not not any horror movies. Horror movies are like comfort food at this point.
Yeah, you really, that's really interesting, Ben. That's that's an interesting way to put it. Do you think that's true, Mary? Do you see it that way in a way?
Yeah.
Horror movies are sort of like
I like horror movies the best, and yeah, I even fall asleep watching them. It's like, oh, now I got to start it all over again because I missed the ending. Oh, no, but yeah, I can fall asleep to any horror movie. It's
like normal people don't quite understand it. like my mom, for instance, she didn't really. I explained it to her, like why I feel like I've become such a horror lover throughout my life. And it finally clicked. But I mean, like back when I was in high school, loving horror movies and metal and shit, and I'd be like in the car and I'd put on like Metallica, and she'd hear the lyrics to One or something. She'd be like, "What the fuck, dude?" And I'm like, "This is badass. What are you talking about?" Like a lot of normal people don't quite understand that you can watch a movie, that's like theatrical in its presentation of gore or violence or whatever, and it's not the same as like watching a genuine gore video of like an actual occurrence.
right.
Totally things, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, some people actually get scared,
Yeah.
By horror movies. Like, I know some people who won't even watch like Stoker's Dracula. Now, I don't want to watch Stoker's Dracula either because it's a bad movie, but I mean, they genuinely consider that. They have such a low tolerance for that sort of, supernatural stuff that, they're like terrified. Whereas, we're a little desensitized perhaps over the years, and so, like I said, you have to get to something like this where you're just like, oh man, this is, it's just awful, or like The Road or something like that,
There's certain horror that's comfort ones, and some that aren't. Like the rapey ones are nah.
Creep show.
I would, if I'm talking horror, and I'm gonna like this movie here, it's like if someone says, well, what's something good you to watch? What's something really good do you recommend to watch? I love this movie. I think this is the best movie I've seen this year. But would I recommend it to somebody? I would have to know that person very well before I would do that. Very well. Because I wouldn't recommend this as a casual watch.
You would just have to let them know it's unrelentingly bleak, which isn't something a lot of people that's not a road most people are willing to go down. Most people, they want to watch Kenobi or, the next, whatever sort of thing, Doctor Strange, that kind of, they want to watch. Yeah. I mean, those are the top franchises, and they want to watch the new Jurassic Park, so, you've got to have a bit of a different mindset. But I mean, you do run into still today. I mean, every once in a while you run into a horror movie that just, knocks your socks off. And I'm thinking of like The Black Coat's Daughter. And I remember the first time I saw that, and I was like, what the hell did I just watch? Did that ending?
Not seen that one yet.
Oh man. And it's another one of Patrick's favorite A24s, but I mean, I saw the end of it and I'm like, what the hell just happened? I was just stunned. It was that good, and just, I mean, it just, but those things are few and far between these days.
Mike is roasting my ass.
No, man, I would 1,000% recommend that to, anybody here on this. Yeah, it was so good. I ended up buying a copy before it even finished. Like I was on my phone. I'm like, all right, I'm getting one of these from Amazon. And that doesn't happen very often. Every once in a while, especially with modern movies. No,
I'm with you. I mean, in fact, I'm going to be I won't spoil the name per se, but because Mary gets to pick for next month, right? So she told me the movie she picked, and I'm sitting there. Even more, she's telling me about it. I'm looking at the trailer, and even before the trailer's done, I'm heading over to Amazon to look for it because I want to buy it because it looks so damn good.
I could buy it too. For sure.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. I would recommend people to buy this. I would recommend it, but like I said, I would have to know their taste a little bit better, like,
Right.
like, and whatnot. Like, I wouldn't want to come out straight up and say, yeah, watch this movie, because this is a really, like you said, this is a really bleak ending. This is not a happy movie at all. There's not going to be any sense of humor in it. Not going to be any laughs or nothing. It's brutal.
It's a bleak journey getting to the end. Fuck the ending. The whole journey getting there is bleak as fuck. Like
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
But I would recommend this movie to anyone, and I tell them that it's definitely bleak as fuck and pretty brutal and can trigger you if you have certain if certain things trigger you. But if but watch it. It's a good film.
Yeah,
I knew going in that that it was based on revenge, and that the act that sort of caused the revenge was like incredibly heinous. So I wasn't shocked by that scene, even though I didn't know what to expect exactly because I avoided spoilers, but I knew the gist of what situation I was getting myself into when I watched this the first time.
I see somebody on the stream says that one movie's at the Dollar Tree. I thought I saw it too, and I didn't grab it. The one you're talking about, Michael. Damn.
Oh,
should have grabbed it.
Checker sells more than chess, so here we are.
Wow. Let's see. Which one is it? I mean, the movie that you picked, Mary, or another
one that Michael picked, the
Black Coat Butter.
Yeah.
Black Coat Butter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was
Yeah.
at the Dollar Tree.
Wow. Yeah. I picked that up too. I picked that up, and I bought that one. So now we see
movies. I don't know why you hate them, man. IFC also does good movies. I mean, you can,
I think he's in competition.
I know, but you don't have to be. A24 has great movies, and so does IFC. Like, just watch good movies. You'll be good.
It's sort of like watching Toho and Toei. It's like, which one is better? I mean, I would go with Toho myself. I think they do better movies than Toei, even though Toei does have camera.
Toho is better, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy the fuck out of Gamera.
I think with the bleak position that we're in, with all the franchises, I don't feel that I'm in a position to knock either of them because I don't want to see Thor, and I don't want to see Fast and the Furious, and I don't want to see Jurassic Park, and I don't want to see the Crimes of Dumbledore or whatever the fuck his name is. So these, I really am at the point where I'm leaning heavily on these smaller production companies that are giving good character-driven stories, and then just expanding my back catalog. Hopefully at some point because my back catalog I can fill forever. I'm never going. You'll never finish that. There is no destination, but you just keep riding that out until hopefully this wave breaks, and
That's what's great about Blumhouse, for instance. There's a bunch of shit Blumhouse movies, but they give the filmmakers enough freedom to sink or swim. They can make a shitty movie, and they're like, "Well, that was cheap. Whatever. The next one might be a fucking, might be another Paranormal Activity or whatever for us." And
I love those.
I have to admit, I am a Blumhouse. I like Blumhouse. I mean, a lot of their movies do miss, but I end up liking them anyway. I mean, it's like, okay, maybe it's not the best movie I've seen, but I end up liking it because I don't know why. It's just like I watched Mercy, I watched the Keeping Room, which is absolutely beautiful. I've seen a lot of those smaller films. I just love it. But you're right. I mean, I don't really watch the big. This is one of the reasons why we started this series, because none of these movies at IFC Midnight, you can look in the community and you're not seeing anything like this. This is all new. No one's doing what this series like we're doing. No one's doing it. In fact, I mean, go even further, I don't even think I've ever seen anybody just do an all I-24 series. No. I mean, and you would think that they would, right? With all the movies that have been coming out or whatnot, but they don't. And it's interesting to me.
I had someone explain it to me, a buddy of mine. He said it's like classic. He said in every band he's been in for like 35 years, he goes, everybody that he teams up with only wants to play classic rock because they want to know that they're playing the songs that people are going to instantly connect with and understand. You know, and then if you're trying to do something else, there's always the anxieties. People aren't going to understand what I'm talking about, you know, that kind of thing.
Can I tell you one thing though? Like, I post covers on my other account. You know, I have like just one for strictly singing, and I will post like, you know, a classic that everyone loves. But I was literally playing the Reading Rainbow theme earlier, and I would post the fuck out of that, and no one would like that, you know. But you just can't give a fuck, really.
Right? Exactly.
That's not how you form a happy life.
Well, let's get back into our tale here. So the husband's been killed. Claire's been assaulted again, and then they turn around and tell the ensign to finish it, and they do the dirty deed, and yet they want him to end up killing her, and of course he pulls his punch, and he knocks her out more than he doesn't try to. He doesn't try, he doesn't hit her a fatal shot. He just enough to knock her out, but not to kill her. So they all leave, and she wakes up, and her whole world's gone. She knew her husband was dead, and then she saw her baby, and then she picks the baby up, and which was traumatic all by itself, and she marches to the one authority she still has left. She marches down there to show, like, where's my justice? How can you, I want justice for me and my family. And yet the officer, Hawkins, has decided to leave. He's going to try to outmarch the other officer to the big town to plead for his captain post. And so while she's been unconscious, that's what he's done. He's gathered a small detachment, and he's heading up north to try to get a new post. And so, he's not even there when she manages to walk down to the I guess the police, I guess that's what they were. And of course they do nothing for her. And, she's devastated by that, but she's also angry. I was stunning that the fact that, here she comes in there and she says, they killed my husband and assaulted me, basically killed my family. And yet the gentleman sitting there will all write a report. He doesn't even have the courtesy or the decency to actually even stand up, which I thought was, he didn't even stand up. He just sat right there in his chair and was like, what do you expect me to do? It's just like, holy, I mean, no effort at all to help her at all. Staggering.
It's a penal colony. I mean, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
It's just probably one less person or two less people, or, that they have to manage. What galled me was that the next day, after murdering all those people and, like gang rape and killing a baby, and that's just, I wasn't surprised at all by that, even in the first viewing, because what we saw that night, and then that they've all left just to go get a promotion.
Yeah.
Just tells you everything that you need to know, that, the British people are not your friends here. Far, far worse than, not being your friends or being disinterested, or indifferent even. They're malevolent here. And at best they'll ignore you. At worst, they'll, do what they've already done.
What did you of course she goes ahead and then she decides that she's going to ride off after him, but her friends try to talk her out of that because they know it's incredibly dangerous land. All sorts of mischief could happen to her, and and so they beg her to find a guide. They said, you can't go up there without a guide. You got to have a guide to go with you. And so, of course, in the movie, they don't say guide. They say, and they see the racism even from the Irish themselves, even though they've been stepped on and they've been racially profiled, they in turn have learned nothing from that, and they do that to the Aborigines. So the term they use in the movie is black. You need to get a black to help you guide you up north. And so that's where we meet Billy. What was your first impression of meeting Billy, Mary?
Well, see, I shut off the movie.
Okay, that's okay. Ben?
My first impression, I'm trying to think back to the first time I watched it, because I knew what to expect this time around. I mean, my first impression of their sort of interactions, their relationship, yeah, she was a dick, to be honest with you. I mean, she was, typically like that shit rolling downhill. He was downhill from her, and she was like, and that's how she was with him at first throughout their whole like dealing. It was like, I mean, she didn't treat him well, even though she wasn't treated well. And yeah, I don't know. He was basically like kind of forced into it, right? Like he initially was pretty hesitant, like, yeah, I don't think so. Fuck you, lady. I don't want to do shit, but she did end up paying him, right? Like a shilling or something, whatever the fuck.
It was a hell of a lot of money back then. I mean, a lot of money.
I don't know how much it was. How much do you think that was?
Probably, at that time period, probably, I don't know, maybe a couple $100, maybe a little less.
I mean, she said that her horse was worth 12 pounds, right? Was it 12 or 20 pounds?
I think 12 pounds, and they mentioned, like giving somebody 20 pounds, when during another scene where with Charlie, Hawkins offered him 20 pounds. He said, you'll never have to work again. So that was tremendous amount of money. And I think a shilling was like I think it was like half of a pound. So still a substantial amount of money. And one shilling now, when do we get there? And of course he didn't believe that she had it. Because I guess prisoners or penal prisoners or whatnot. I mean, where were they getting money? Who was giving it to him? He didn't believe that she had it.
But at the same time, he didn't differentiate her from the British. You know what I mean? Until later, he didn't know that she was Irish or whatever.
No,
to him, she was just Britain. She was a white English person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually thought she was English.
Yeah.
Until a later scene where she says, "No, I'm not." But it's a very important, as she painted him with a broad brush. He did the same to her. And I can't blame him. And I didn't. No, not at all. What was your first impression of Billy, Mike?
I liked him.
Me too.
And my sympathy shifted away from Claire to him, because she lied to him about why they were going, because she knew he never would have said yes if they were going to kill British officers. I wasn't exactly sure at the end of the day that he was in a position to say no, or he wasn't aware that he was in a position to say no under those circumstances if she had told him the truth. But it's like it's like Ben was saying, as bad as she, her situation was, she flipped like that in a second, to look down on him. As bad as things were, she wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Which, is sort of like a, underlying story in this whole sort of thing, in that, they're actually on these other people, they're in these other people's countries, which she starts to realize towards the end of the movie, that as much as she's a victim, maybe Billy's the biggest victim here of all, because, all of his people are just being exterminated.
Yeah.
And so as bad as she has it, there's somebody here who actually has it worse.
much worse.
Yeah.
They definitely get bonded through joint trauma, right? Like they've both lost their families, and that's something that really like they sort of learn later on, and then they're just like, they become bonded by it,
Wasn't suffering. I can't remember much about the Babadook except that I didn't like that kid. But wasn't suffering like a theme in that movie too?
It's like grief.
Was it grief? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's sort of a thing. I thought I read somewhere that like after she did the Babadook, like they were throwing scripts at her, but she really decided that this was what she wanted to do. And it's
Glad she did it.
The Babadook was crowdfunded, and I think it was wildly successful. Yeah. I think it was a smaller budget independent film, and I think it's widely popular, got a lot of critical acclaim, and I think it made a metric fuck ton of money too. So
yeah. It's definitely a cult film now.
I've only seen parts. The kid screaming reminds me of the kid screaming in Cujo.
I mean, that's the thing about the kid, like it's the same as like the distasteful acts in this movie that sort of propagate the revenge story. Like he's annoying as fuck, but that's his goal. He does a great job, right?
Yeah.
He's successful, and of course he's meant to fucking just drive you up a wall.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yep, I agree with that.
But yeah, I mean, she immediately becomes very dominating. Like she needs his help, but she's pointing that gun at him the whole time.
Yeah.
And she's got a gun like right at his back the whole time. She just becomes an asshole. And it's just like a lot of my sympathies sort of went away for her. I mean, because
mine too.
Yeah, and I was just like, really? Wow, that was fucking fast. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we all experience grief in some way or form, but the last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and go, I'm going to go down to my oncologist and sit there and say, I'm going to point a gun at you because you failed, or you failed to do your duty. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make you work on the next patient with me having a gun on you. I mean, that was just wrong. I didn't understand that. It's just like he agreed to help you. He took your money. He's going to do the job, and then sit there and have the weapon pointed at him just was.
There was also no trust between them at that point. She didn't know if he would run off. I mean, right? She's like, here, I'll give you this now and another later, and she didn't. And no reason to, because every time there was some shit that went down, he was like, peace, I'm out. And he says, it's not my job to fucking protect you. It's my job to lead you to where you're getting to, lady. Like,
I think there's a lot of ignorance. She's sort of unaware of what's actually happening with the Aboriginal people there. She's so concentrated on her, trying to survive in her own life. She's almost got like a tunnel vision, kind of thing going on, understandably. Which this sort of shock is, she's, in this sort of shock treatment, that kind of shocks her out of it, and forces her to see, hey, things are tough all over, but, it's also happening to the, the non-Irish too.
And when she first heads out, I mean, there's a pretty clear shot of Aboriginals hanging from a tree that had been lynched. You know what I mean? Like, just like at the very foot of her journey. So,
I mean, and he had reason to fear. He had a reason to disappear. I mean, I'm sure he saw the people hanging there before she did, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why he was able to blend in and disappear, because he already knew what could happen to him, even though he was dressed up in Western clothing. He dressed like them. He spoke the language. He spoke English. And yet there were people that wouldn't give a rat's ass about that. They would only see him as a native, and they would harm him.
That was an interesting.
I don't blame him at all for disappearing.
That was an interesting dynamic, that they needed the trackers to get them through. I mean, they like needed them because later on in the film, when they lose their tracker, they're fucked, and they're like, oh shit, we're fucked. So it's interesting, like, how much they depend on them and how shitty they treat them simultaneously,
Yeah. And so that's the thing you want to do with the tracker is you want to treat him like, he make sure he eats before you, make sure he gets the best pillow, make sure he gets the best of everything, because your life is dependent on him,
No, these people aren't equal. I've got a gun and they don't. So, that's clearly the way that, that they're looking at it here. And Claire's looking at it that way at least at the beginning. But then, there are a couple of occasions where, she's almost waylaid on the road, and she realizes, her position is very precarious, and Ben says, I'm not here to protect you. And he couldn't. Not really. I mean, with all those people with guns and chain gangs and, it's a horror show.
Yeah, I think her whole attitude, her whole attitude, I think, started to shift during that first encounter where she was held on the road, and they were sitting there, I want to see your papers. And then they threatened her with, what they threatened her with. And, and she's like, no, I don't think so. Well, then show me your papers. And she just knew that she had no rights or there was going to be any mercy for her. So she saw that. She's like, okay, I can't be how I am because I need this. I need him, and that's why she's like, where are we? And that's what he told her. I'm not here to protect you. She has to protect herself by coming back from the edge of the abyss, where she's just so, like you said, that's a good way to put it, Mike, was tunnel vision. She had to quit having that tunnel vision and start coming back to see a little bit more of what was in front of her. Otherwise, she was going to go right off the cliff and not even know it.
I don't really think that flip was switched though at that point. Not even after he sort of saves her in the river. I mean, it's a little after that she's like, oh, okay,
Well, I think she looked at him. I think she looked at him a little bit differently, I think, because she's, it's like, I don't think she was quite as straight out, just brutal as she was toward him. She realized that, hey, I'm in the same shoes that he's walking in as a woman. And no one's going to give me a break. We're going to have to work together and somehow. And even when they went to the river, she still was, but she still had to try. I can understand that, even though he told her, no, you don't want to try to do that. But it wasn't like, I don't know. It's just sort of like it seemed to me more as a desperation move, more than as her telling him you don't know what you're talking about. I think she knew that he was right, but I think that her drive just carried her forward. And I do think she was starting to gain some respect for for some of the things that he was saying. That's just how I saw it. That river scene though was pretty intense, and she started dreaming too. I thought that was really interesting aspect of the movie too, when she started, because she was starting to get wore down because she couldn't sleep.
Yeah, I mean that scene where they get to the river and it's like, or maybe it was like flash flooded. Maybe it was supposed to be a little creek or something. I don't know. But obviously there was going to be an issue crossing, and she just charges in and ends up like almost costing her life. But when it came down to brass tacks, as it were, he saves her ass, right?
Yeah.
I get she needs him a lot more than he needs her.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And that doesn't occur to her for quite a while. He doesn't, because he's not as smart as her. He doesn't know as much as her. She's paying the money. He's the boy. And so it takes her a while to sort of just finally, shut up, and maybe slow down a little bit. I can't remember exactly at what point it starts to turn a bit. I can't remember.
I think it was around a campfire. I mean, it started. I don't know when it starts to turn, because it's not like just all of a sudden,
Right.
I think it started probably at the river, maybe before, like Patrick was saying, the seeds that was sown that she has like you know, she's not really in control of the situation, even though she's trying to be in control of the situation. So she's sort of starting to realize that there's big threats there that they can fuck her up. But really what ends up really bonding them is he realizes that she's persecuted and not like a British piece of shit. Right?
She's Irish.
Yeah,
She's Ireland, not England. Yeah, that helps a lot. That helps a lot. His willingness to see her as something other than, just some, white oppressor kind of, sort of caricature that he has, in her. Because he thinks that he's taking her to go see her husband.
Yeah.
So to him, it's just, he just sees, what he wants to see or, what he's formed in his own head. She already is having no idea, as to, why they're actually out there.
But we already see before they become sort of like,
a team.
Before they become a team, he's already demonstrating that he's like the most likable person in the whole fucking movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
He saves her ass. He doesn't have to. There's like, he told her not to go, she fucked it up. And like, she was was like, whoops, well, I fucked that one up, I guess. And he like, does his magic way of getting upstream, like, pulling her out. So yeah, I mean, off the bat, he's pretty much like,
yeah. You okay?
Yeah.
Something fell.
Yeah.
Something fell over here. Okay.
Yeah, I thought the scene at the fire where she explains what she is, and I'm Irish, I'm Ireland, and she speaks Gaelic, and she, she explains that, and he sees that, and the other thing too we got to take into consideration too is that there was also some other character development, because we also see Hawkins and his detachment. We see them out with their guy Charlie. And there's a key scene in the movie where they have a young boy there. They're pushing a cart, and the young boy, he's by about 12 or 13, and he's sitting there going like,
Eddie.
He's criticized. How old was he? 8?
No, I said his name was Eddie.
Eddie. And he's like 12 years old or whatnot, and he's pushing the supply cart around. They don't have any horses. They're doing this all by foot. And they're pushing this heavy cart through, and Hawkins bonds with Eddie. He says, I'm stronger than these two other guys, these two grown men that you got. I'm stronger than they are, And then when he asks him, he says, "Are you crying?" He says, "Tears are for girls." And then Hawkins seems to really bond with him. And
he seems to, right? He seems to, but that's another powerful like mechanism in the film, because they're bonded, and he's like, "Oh, you're my kid, like I'm gonna teach you how to shoot a gun, and like,
right,
we'll make a man out of you, son,
Right.
And then later on, we find out that there's no love at all, and it really paints a picture of like who Hawkins is, like even someone who's like, bonded to is just like in an instant, just like, God, shut the fuck up, kid. Jesus.
So he's a total sociopath. There's nothing there that he connect with. There's no connection with with his humanity. He sees people as just things to be used.
Yeah.
Things to be used for his own personal gain.
Yeah, if you could get something out of him, then he'll be okay with you. I mean, you think about it, they're doing all that just so this guy can get his promotion.
Yeah.
They're going through all that on this trek just so this fucking evil bastard can get a promotion. I mean, that's unbelievable. They're trekking from like one side of the country to the other on foot.
On foot. Yeah.
You would think they would be glad to, but I mean, maybe, he has, they say sociopaths can be very, what's the word?
Charming?
Yeah, charming. So, at that low sort of feral level, I mean, clearly it doesn't seem to work on too many of his superiors, at least once they're around him for very long, but maybe at that sort of, gutter level, he has some sort of charm over those people, and, they just kind of want to follow him.
But it does with the kid, right? Like, he's like, "Oh, hey, kid, I'm going to teach you how to shoot a gun." And like, to that kid, that's like, "Oh man, this dude's the coolest fucking dude I've ever met," like,
and that's a chance for him to rise.
Yeah.
Right.
There's like, a small little,
now I got this kid under my charms to do my bidding whenever the fuck I want. So this is cool. But then ultimately the kid doesn't, and he's like, well, fuck you then.
Yeah.
They also get led astray by their guide. Their guide, it's like we could take the safe route. I'll take you the shortcut, and they go around that shortcut, and of course Charlie has no idea that they're being followed. But that move brings Claire and
he knows they're being followed. They raped that girl and killed her in front of like those other Aboriginals, and then they ran away. And it was after that, so he knows like they're hot on our trail. That's how he got them.
I got in front of that. I got in front of it. You're right. Okay, so but wait a minute, didn't they? Yeah, they. That's what happened. They did the shortcut. Then they ran to the Aborigines, and yeah, right. I mean, the girl and the little boy, and they go ahead and they take the mother, and they leave the little boy behind.
Yeah.
That was, that was certain death for that little boy. Unless he was found quickly. And then you're right, they're marching along, and then they get encountered by the small group. That fight scene was pretty, man, it was wicked. It was wicked.
And it was, you could clearly see that was the moment that Charlie was like, well, okay, fuck these dudes. You know what I mean? Like, once they got sort of like outside of threat zone, that's when he took them, started taking them astray, right?
Yeah, he clearly did that on purpose as like revenge for Luana. And I really liked Uncle Charlie. I liked that character because he was just quiet, and he could only do so much, but within the parameters of what he could do, he tried to screw them as hard as he possibly could. And he did a rather effective job of it.
Of course, the ensign, he gets, one of the helpers on the cart, he gets killed right off the bat, and then the ensign gets wounded. He gets a spear through his leg, and he bolts. They all bolt. Before and then they hold he runs. They grab the girl hostage that they just captured, and that's also this is the part that I'm with Mary about. They had that scene with the Luana where they assaulted her, and I'm not necessarily convinced that they needed to show us that.
They didn't need to show us that. This movie could have been PG if they wanted it to be, but then it would.
I just feel like in her writing, Kent's writing, I think her script had already more than established that Hawkins and his soldiers were just pieces of shit. We already saw the assault on Claire, not once but twice. And the killing of the baby, killing of her husband. We know what these guys are. We know they're just.
You know what they are, but you also see in that scene the Aboriginal situation, and you see how resigned they are. You see sort of the balance of them being resigned to being treated like garbage, and then them also being like, "Fuck you guys," I think they didn't dwell on it more than they needed to. I didn't think personally.
The Black War is basically, now through some modern historians, they're deciding whether or not they want to try to label it a genocide. So, this is taking place while actively there's, a war going on / genocide. Yeah. And I think the deaths were 5-1, forever. They almost wiped all, I think the Black War almost wiped all the Aboriginals off the island.
Yeah.
So, you're not going to, she's accurate, and unflinchingly showing it. Like I said, she really went to the wall with it. We're having this conversation about it because of how far she actually went. So I was okay. It's hard to look at. It's not fun.
It is.
It's not fun by any stretch of the imagination. Don't misunderstand me, but I won't. I personally wouldn't criticize it.
I didn't feel it was gratuitous personally.
I just thought her writing was so strong. Her writing up to that point, all throughout the movie was so strong. It's not like you need to, she's proved her point many times over, and it's just I just don't know. Was it more of a shock value, more? I mean, because by this point in this movie, if you haven't got what she's been telling you up to this point, you're never going to get it. You're not getting it.
I think at that point, what she's also doing, because you're about only halfway into the movie, maybe a little bit more by the time you get to Luana. So you're about an hour in. This is like 2 hours and 15 minutes. What she's doing, at least I'm just guessing, but at least what I sort of get out of it in this discussion now is that she's closing the door on any sort of redemption arc for these guys. Like there's just not going to be any. Because, you could have somebody and then at the last second they sort of flip. And maybe that would have been a shock or something like that, where Uncle Charlie wouldn't have had to done something because someone else steps up, whether it's the ensign or something like this. But I think what she's showing is that these people are just locked into this position, and they're not going to vary at all. This is who they are, no matter how bad it gets. They're just going. It's like, what's that 12-step thing where the basement has basements? They're just going to keep sinking lower and lower as they go.
I think that door would have been totally shut if she has shown the ensign, finally falling prey to that, and him taking a part of the assault. But once again, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. And yes, while he did kill that baby, and we talked about this, while he killed that baby, that left up to his own devices, he wouldn't have even been there in the shack. If he had his way of not being there, he wouldn't have been. Whereas Ruse would have been.
Wait, are we talking about the when they were raping the Aboriginal woman, or are we talking about?
He stood off. He was standing off. He didn't stop it, but he didn't take any part. He had no part of it. He didn't want any part.
Right, but you could have just as easily made a story where he makes a stand and then gets gunned down by the sergeant or the major or something like that. But he chooses to do nothing.
Yeah, he
chooses himself.
He also gets like sort of threatened, right? Like the dude's like, "Hey, dude, next time I look at you, you better be fucking smiling, or I'm gonna kill you myself."
Right?
And that scene, you see the dichotomy, because you see like, I mean, who's his piece of shit sort of lackey?
The sergeant,
Sergeant Ruse.
Was that his name? The Ruse, the dude who he basically.
Yeah, because you're right in the sense, but remember the scene where Hawkins picks up a knife. He picks up the knife, and he goes and he sits next to him. And I thought he was going to kill him. I thought because he was talking that way, I thought he was going to stand over there and put the knife in his ribs. I didn't think he was going to let him live. I thought he was going to kill him to keep him quiet. But he turned around and says, I don't want to hear this again. This will be the last time we talk about this. But the ensign was totally coward. He was scared for his life. I think the only thing that was going in his head was self-preservation. I don't think he was a bad person, but I think he was scared for his life. I think he's just
following orders.
Yeah.
Well, following orders means you could sit there. I think he had emotions. I don't think he liked what he saw, but I think he was just scared. I think he was just pure out and out scared.
He did follow orders, though.
Yeah, he was following orders.
Yeah, well, he got threatened too. Here you got your commanding officer sitting next to you with a blade in his hand, saying, "Yeah, so we're not going to talk about this. What happened before, right? We're not going to. This is our last discussion, right? Of course, it's going to be. Of course, yeah."
Right, but how many times throughout history have we heard that? The reluctant villain. Whether it's the Holocaust or whatever, these sorts of things. I'm sure there was somebody in there that wasn't 100% into it, but they participate.
Sure, I'm not justifying it. You're right. It would have been better for him to make a stand and die. To die defending decency than not. But again, how old was the kid? How old is he? 21, 22? It's like there's some things that like I don't know. I just felt like he just got put in. I mean, I wouldn't say he was a hero per se at all, but I mean, stretch of the imagination. But I say I had empathy for him.
His character was designed to make you feel that way.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
and I
what's
did.
interesting about this movie. It's like as
good writing.
heinous as the acts are, there's still layers and nuance. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's
That's
not
good
just
writing.
like yeah.
Yeah, it's really good writing.
They're
I
not
didn't have
flat
that-
characters.
I didn't have any empathy at all for Hawkins and Ruth. I wanted them to die, and I wanted them to die slow. In fact, when they finally got their comeuppance, I didn't want that to be fast. I didn't want that. I wanted them to suffer. If that makes me a bad person for saying that, then that's how I felt when I saw them. That I sometimes in movies like this, sometimes in these movies, it's like you see the villain and he's done a ton of shit to a lot of people. Yet at the end of the movie, he gets shot. It's just like, that's it. That's all you got for him. It's like, why does he get to get out so easy? Why does he get to escape with just, he kills like 5 main heroes' family or something or whatever, and yet, by torturing them or whatnot, and all of a sudden he gets shot and then he falls down and that's it.
You like the show 24? That happened all the time in 24.
Yeah.
You have an arch ass
Jack
villain,
Bauer.
and they're like a piece of shit for like the whole season, and then he's like, here's the keys. It's like, oh, that guy's great. I mean, talk about no nuance, but I like that show too.
Yeah. Same here. But there are very few movies that go down the other path. With the villain dying a very slow sort of, because maybe that's what separates the hero from the villain, and then you don't start to get into the anti-hero trope, where the bad guys the good guys doing the wrong thing but for the right reasons, that kind of thing. Yeah. These people maintain their humanity, and so they've lost everything, but they don't lose that.
Yeah,
he does kill that ensign dude very brutally, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, here he is. He got fucked up in the leg. He's running for his life, and she's after him, and yeah. I mean, that's how every main villain should buy the farm, But I didn't see him as a main villain. I just didn't see him as a villain. I just felt sorry for him, and it's like, and you could tell by his whole actions that, he didn't show any bravado. He didn't sit there and say, well, fine, fuck it. I did it. I killed your kid. So what? Shoot me. He didn't show any of that bravado. He was terrified. He didn't, he knew, and he had enough conscience he regretted it. And he didn't regret it because he got caught. He regretted it because he didn't want to be there. I'm not supposed to be here. Yeah. And so you're right. And go ahead.
That's the interesting part about her writing, how she developed the characters. I mean, he had a conscience. He did terrible things, but like he killed the baby, but he just hit the baby right against the wall. He didn't necessarily he didn't choke it till it stopped moving or something. And when he was tasked to kill her, he did the same thing, but kind of pulled his punch or whatever. And maybe he thought he was doing that with the baby, but the net result of his actions are he killed the fucking baby. I mean, and was on the road, to fuck up a bunch of other people.
And and then she was still conscious when she saw him do that. So of course she's gonna just she's gonna, and I don't blame her. I don't blame her at all. I mean, if I was in her shoes, I would have did the same thing. I would have. Who wouldn't have in that situation, right?
Who he sort of reminds me of. Have you guys ever seen that Western Lonesome Dove?
Yes.
Well, he reminds me of Robert Urich, Jake Spoon. Remember they end up having that. He goes bad and he hooks up with those people that are just awful, but he can't get away from them. And then Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones come along and they're like, hey, man, you hung out with them while they were doing this stuff. We're hanging you too. And he was their friend. Yeah. He was their friend, but he's like, I'm sorry, but, you can't do this kind of stuff and
expect to get away with it.
Yeah, he has to go. That's a great story arc. I mean, he's just this sort of guy, any wind just kind of blows him and he ends up falling into with these awful murderers, and he ends up riding with them. And so when he gets caught. They all get caught together, and they all get hung.
The ending part where the ensign is dying, and he I thought for sure, like it would be like a cold shower, so to speak, but he's dying, and he says mother. I just thought that, man, I thought right there, I said, okay, that'll be the end of it. She's gonna be like, just gonna wake her up, like, okay, but it didn't. She's just like, it slowed her down for a minute while she got a little bit of her strength back, but she just fucking ruined him. She ruined him, that's for sure. He died the hardest of anybody in that movie.
And the interesting part is Billy, like, he still thought they were going to see her husband, right? That was the moment he realized that something was off.
Billy's sitting over there. He's just sitting there like, holy shit. He's like,
not her husband. This is your husband. You need a new husband.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like, and you could tell he was terrified, but he wanted, like, he was like shocked and appalled at what she had just done, but he also kind of wanted to understand it, you know what I mean? Like, and he was open enough to understand her situation, and they basically were like, yeah, both of our families were completely taken from us, and we were abused by this group of assholes, and he understands, and they're bonded through that joint trauma.
Yeah.
All right. I'll have to push this a little bit here. So after the I don't want to do that either. You know what, Mike, can you take us through the final act, because you could do it a lot better than I am and a lot faster.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
I'm terrible at doing this. I always go.
I'm not in any rush. I mean, do you guys? Patrick, go ahead, man. Just go. That's
okay.
Cool.
All right. So we then see that we see what happened to scatter the ensign dies. Now they see that that Claire, Billy seeing Claire for why she's really driving as hard as she is, and you're right, that's when they start bonding, and they start talking about they talk about loss of family too. That's another thing they did at the campfire, to talk about the loss of family. So Charlie, he sees what happened. He saw what happened when the tribe came over to rescue Loana, and they killed her in cold blood. After they offered to lay down their arms, like, we're not going to attack you anymore, and then they still did it anyway. So Charlie sees that he's had enough, so he deliberately leads them off the beaten track, and he takes them to a long winding road up to a mountain. And they don't know where they're at all. It's like, where are we going? And Charlie sits there and he tells them, well, we're here. I've taken you where you need to be, which is lost, because he knows that while they might get down, they're still not going to be there long enough, because they need to get to the town the next day. They have to be there. They only have a certain amount of time to get there. And so Charlie takes them off the beaten track, and he causes them to get lost. And then, of course, Hawkins is sitting there trying to get him to take them back. But that Charlie was dead anyway. Whether he was going to die there, or let's say he would have led them back, they would have killed him as soon as they recognized the track of the road. So Charlie knew one way or the other he was going to die. And Hawkins is trying to convince him to come back. And of course, Ruse being Ruse, he kills him. While they're out there stranded in the middle of nowhere. And, of course, Hawkins is extremely pissed at that. And he draws his weapon and he threatens Ruse, like, you're a dumb shit for doing that. And he has the gun at his head. He's going to kill him. And it's only by the grace of God that he doesn't. But
the grace of the kid.
Yeah. He shoots the gun right at the sergeant's ear. I can't imagine how much that hurt. he probably would have
Well,
lost the whole. Go ahead.
No, it's not even that he's angry that the man is dead. He's angry that he doesn't know how to get to the town.
Yeah.
Like, there's no regard for Charlie's life.
Yeah.
It's just how it inconveniences them on the trip. And then they're
Exactly.
sort of lost in the middle of nowhere. But it has nothing to do with Charlie actually dying or being murdered.
And you
Yeah.
see him turning on his psychopath charm, right? Because he's like,
Yeah.
okay, you had your joke. Let's just get back on the road, being all charming and nice and shit, instead of being like, hey, you fucking bitch, take us. So trying to manipulate him to get what he wants. And
That's why he offered them that 20 pounds. He's, I'll give you 20 pounds. You never have to work again. So
It really sort of touches into, too, real quick, how much the Aboriginals must have really hated these people. You know, like they kind of have to smile and they kind of have to go along. And sure, I'll walk all the way to the other end of the country for you, you know, just so you can get your, you know, your fucking promotion, you know, but they really, like, you know, just, it's like, you know, as a friend of mine says, it's a half a beer beneath the surface, you know, that they just really hate all of these people. And they did have some understanding about the Irish, which is what helps, you know, Claire and Billy to bond. But I mean, you know, to have seen all, you know, these sorts of things happen all the time, which is what set the Black War off to begin with. You know, the atrocities and the murders and the, you know, all these sorts of things.
yeah, you know, and the thing is like, you know, of course, Claire and Billy have no idea what's been going on. They're just tracking Charlie. You know, they're, you know, following Charlie's track. So, you know, they go up there and they find out that, you know, because he explained to Claire that Charlie was, you know, last of his family because his family had already been destroyed. So, you know, pretty much almost. And so, you know, he took Charlie, and you know, he looked at Charlie as an uncle. And so they come up there and they see Charlie's dead, and now, you know, now Billy, you know, now he's like red hot now. You know, he wants justice as well, and you know, he's devastated, and so that puts a little pep in their step, and they accelerate the pace, you know, as far as finding Hawkins and his detachment. The next scene is when Hawkins, they finally do find the road. They come out and they find the road, and then the boy, you know, now he wants him to shoot Ruse. He wants him to shoot him, you know, kill him, you know, because he's you know, he's no use to them now. And Eddie has the pistol, and he's telling him to shoot him, you know, shoot him, and but he can't.
well, he was telling them to shoot Billy. I mean, even before we get to this point,
I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, they captured Billy. Billy. Yeah.
You see, Claire was her name, right? The main characteress.
Yeah.
You see her resolve waver, and she's like, "Let's just get the fuck out of here." And so you sort of see like her arc just stop, where she was so driven before that she would like drown in a river in order to get to her goal. Now she just sort of sees like she's just kind of had enough. But then she's forced to like sort of, just by her situation, she ends up forced to sort of see it through to its end. I mean, but even when we get there, we'll get there. But yeah, they get separated, right? And so she's no longer being led by Billy. They are. And when they finally get to the main road, and he's like, "Oh, look where we are. Okay, kill the black Eddie." Was that his name? Eddie.
Eddie was the boy. Yeah. It's ugly all the way through, man.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I totally skipped that whole part. That was goofy. You're right. I mean, he, you know, like what she drew down on Hawkins, and she couldn't pull the trigger on him. She
lost her nerve.
Yeah. And of course, you know, then she gets clipped by the musket ball. She gets hit in the arm, and they run, and you know, and that's when, you know, they capture Billy, and then, you know, they go on the road, and that was harrowing. You know, thinking about that, making a 12-year-old boy, you know, pull the trigger. You know, I was just like, wow, that was a little mind-boggling.
It separates, I mean, who is actually a killer here and who isn't. They're killers. Hawkins and the Sergeant Ruse. But Claire, for all her, she murders that guy on like the heat of fighting. And he's got a knife, and they're trying to kill each other. But I mean, when she just draws down in cold blood to kill somebody, she can't do it. Same way Billy's not really a killer until he gets past a certain point, and he understands that, some things need to happen.
Yeah.
But they're not murderers. And so that's not necessary. I mean, it's annoying when she loses her nerve, but then you think about it and you're like, well, maybe that's not a bad thing because she keeps her humanity.
Yeah, they had to show that, but it would have been the pointless for the movie to show her slowly becoming a Hawkins. By the end of the movie, she's just had no mercy or compassion or anything, and she's just killing it just for the sake of killing. Then sort of like, yes, we feel sorry for her, and we're on her side, but if she's just you can kill somebody like when she killed the ensign, we could understand that. We can and she after that she looked at what she had done, and I do think that she I think she felt some relief, but I think she also thought about it because she dreamt about the soldier. She saw him in his dreams haunting her, and so I think that really I sort of woke her up a little bit, like maybe this is not what I particularly want as much as I still want it, but not so a one-track mind on it.
Yeah, she was disgusted by it.
I mean, but that's sort of the same character arc trajectory that the ensign had. You know what I mean? He was sort of right there with her, but ended up getting murdered by her because he was also like, oh God, what the fuck did I do? Like, what is this? Like, oh God, I'm not going to rape that woman, but I don't feel so that, I'm scared to stop them from doing it. And like, I mean, he was disgusted by his actions, right? The guy who killed the baby.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But she was still more like,
I agree with that. Yeah.
What she did, I wouldn't quite put I don't know. I was going to say, maybe I'm just being argumentative, but it seems more like a natural law kind of thing.
No, I mean, but what I'm saying is just if you shift your perspective just a little, where you're saying like she's haunted by his image. I mean, clearly
he was disgusted too. Yeah,
clearly he was like being haunted too.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just like different, layers
so that's really great writing.
Yeah, it's good news.
It's really great writing. I mean, like I said, she got tons of scripts thrown at her, and she chose to write her own script, and she really hit it out of the park, man. I mean, it's a shame in this day of and I feel like I say this all the time, but the big blockbusters take up all the oxygen, and people don't know about this really solid movie. That's been out between the past couple of years, and maybe it got drowned out by Avengers Endgame or something like that, or whatever else came along that year, and people don't know.
I mean, is there another movie that we could relate to this kind of arc? I mean, is there a like a I'm talking, I want to
The Proposition.
Another movie? Huh?
The Proposition, I would say.
The Proposition.
That becomes a Guy Pearce, Danny Houston, Ray Winstone. It takes place in colonial Australia. It's a Western.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I just want I just wanted to touch upon something there. But I lost it. All right. So now we're now the boy's being told, Eddie's being told to shoot Billy. He can't do it. And of course, Hawkins immediately turns around and he just lets him down. He says, I thought you were something. I thought you could be a killer. I thought you could be this or that or whatever. And obviously he can't. And so he just shoots him point blankly. The kid's crying. He's upset. He's a young kid. He
doesn't even shoot him point blankly. He's just leaves him there. And then it's because the kid's crying. He's like, oh, that fucking sound is so annoying.
Well, then remember, at first he tells him he's going to tell the constable there's an escaped convict on the road, and I'm going to add 5 more years to your sentence. So
Yeah.
This is like a 10-year-old kid who's already serving like a prison sentence.
Yeah.
10 or 12-year-old kid, and he's got, I'm going to tell him you're running away, and I'm going to add 5 more years to your sentence just because you wouldn't murder somebody.
Yeah.
So this man, he just keeps descending further and further and further. He just every time, where someone might have a redemptive arc, this guy just doubles down. And
Yeah.
even the sergeant is like giving pause at one point. After they killed Charlie, and he's forced to sort of confront like what he did, maybe not for the right reasons, but even he takes pause. But every time this Hawkins, he just doubles down again and again and again.
Yep, and they finally find their way into town. Claire tries to jump on a wagon for a ride. And initially she's told no, but then someone has sympathy on her. And so she's able to jump on the back of this wagon to go into town when she sees Billy. Billy has managed to, to escape and come around, and he's back on the track, maybe like a mile back. And she immediately stops the coach, jumps down and runs to him. And then those two reunite, and then they head into town themselves. And that was a little tense too, because here they are, and this time she's not, well, first they pass by, before they get into town, on the borders of the town, they passed by that chain gang. They captured like 6 Aborigines, and they're marching them, and Claire had to put the gun back on Billy, like she did in the beginning, though this time there was no heat behind it. It was just for pretense. And so they're walking. She's got a gun on his back, and I'm just we're just going down the road a piece, and then Billy and one of the Aborigines they start talking about their peoples, different peoples, and Billy finds out that his tribe has been wiped out to a man. There's no more of Billy's family. They're all gone. His whole tribe is gone. And they start talking, and then the men they kill them all in cold blood. I mean, they were chained up, had neck collars around them. They weren't going anywhere, but these white men just killed them dead as for no reason.
And we're gonna cut off homeboy's head for a trophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They cut that guy's head off.
Yeah. And that was brutal. That was absolutely brutal. And then when Claire walks by, she's barely able to hold the gun up because she's so overcome by emotion. The gun starts wavering. She's sickened, and and of course Billy, he's heartbroken as well. So they get into town. They finally made it.
Well, before they get into town, they meet up with that old couple.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
And this is on the heels of like him basically realizing that the whites had like just murdered his whole like family and like everyone, his whole people. And like and they end up like he's on the floor. They're being kind. They're like, oh, come here, get washed up, eat some food. And they make him come to the table and eat like a human with the rest of them, and he just breaks down and cries, right? I mean,
yeah, he says, "This is my country."
yeah.
And these people they don't have an answer for that. It almost seems like they're being gracious.
Yeah.
But then he lets you know, like, why is this happening at all? Like, this is actually my country. It just undercuts, that sort of kindness that you think, you're kind of being shown, which is by the wife sort of given reluctantly.
Yeah.
It's just. Hey, the agoraphobes in the house.
yep.
Hey, Keith,
What's up, Gore?
Mighty Cases in the house. Echoes in the house. To folks who are staying for the Friday the 13th, it's supposed to start at 9 o'clock. It's going to run a couple minutes late. I'll be jumping off and doing that right after we're done here. So don't go anywhere. We'll be done here in a minute or two. No, a little longer. Yeah, I gotta hurry up and go for the great film to Friday the 13th.
Okay.
That's like isn't that like eating dessert before the main course?
I did
comfort food, man. It's like
I did
it's
okay.
like this was like the main course, and you're gonna go have dessert.
Yeah, this is why I started the show at 7 o'clock, because I knew this movie was going to be a very deep one. So that's the reason why. It seems like these discussions get really into it, and I really like it. So I'm not, I just know some of the folks here are probably, itchy. Okay, so now you're right. They had that feed, and they got some rest and whatnot. I'll tell you another thing that really caught my attention about this too. I was just thinking, how do their clothes stay intact?
They made clothes better back then.
I guess so, because I'm thinking about it and going like, man, they've been through mud, they've been through rain, they've been through a river, they've been through everything, they've been through running and everything else. How in the hell are their clothes still able to stay on them as well as they did without starting to rot off?
They made everything better back then, dude. Like you'd buy a chair and youuld have it for generations. It's not like
things were built to last, man. Yeah, things were built to last, not to be replaced every 2 years.
It was just funny. I was just an off the wall thought. I thought, I was watching this movie and going like, how are their clothes staying so nice? Because all right,
ancient Chinese secret,
I was just like, man, is there a catalog I can go to, or after they, they're on the borders of the town, then they go in, and at first they try to do it. First Claire tells Billy to stay in this little cove and gives him the rifle and says, stay there, don't come out, because right now things are so tight and so tension is high. And first she tries to, confront him in the middle of the street, Hawkins. And Hawkins is sitting there going like, no one's going to listen to you. If I see you again, I'm going to kill you myself. You came all this way out here for nothing. He's got a bright new uniform on there. He got his captain's post, and, and there he is.
That was really galling, actually, to see him all cleaned up.
Yeah.
And looking all shiny with his brand new. That was the best he looked throughout the whole movie.
Yeah. And of course, the sergeant still
very
looking like
smug look on his face too.
Yeah, he's all clean shaven and oily.
Of course, the sergeant's still looking scrubby. He's still got that old uniform on. He's still looking all scruffed up and whatnot. So they tell Claire that, that's what he tells her. He says, if I see you again, next time I see you, I'll kill you myself. And he'll do it too. We know that. So he marches off to the officers' quarters.
It's worth making the distinction that she didn't confront him. She saw her horse and walked over to it and then bumped into him, right? It's worth making that distinction. I think
that's that sounds about right.
But she still, she still was there. She still made herself known to him.
But she didn't see him across the street and walk up to him and be like, "Hey, you piece of shit." And,
no. But she did walk up. I mean, she did go over there. She did see him, and she didn't draw down. Yeah, she didn't. Right. Yeah, she didn't like draw down on him or anything like that. But she definitely let him know that she was there, that she had followed him all the way there. So even like maybe they thought that after she got shot, because remember Billy told them when they captured him that she had been shot and run off into the forest. So maybe they didn't think they see her again. And
they figured she'd die without a guide, right?
Huh?
They figured she'd die without a guide.
Right. I don't think Hawkins and Ruse were expecting her to show up. And
she also wasn't expecting to see them at that moment. She just saw her horse and walked over to it. She didn't see him. She saw the horse and then bumped into him as he was coming out of the building. And then they had their moment.
Yeah. And then after he walks into the officer's quarters, she just sits there, and you can see that her whole demeanor went back to what it was when she first started on the journey. That just like narrow, like, okay, that laser focus.
Kind of. She had found her resolution, but her sort of goal was a little different, I thought. You know what I mean? She didn't go in there to murder him.
No, I think she wanted him to be found I think she wanted justice. Yeah. I don't think she wanted revenge as much as she wanted justice.
But before she was like being led by rage, and this time she's just resolute to take her stand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it was. I think it was much more intense.
Yeah.
it was much more intense outside, by what he was saying to her or whatnot. And then she walked into him inside the off. She actually almost walked in there and said her piece, and how calm she stayed. Because if there's one thing you notice, that nobody stood up for Hawkins.
And
No one stood up to talk to silence her.
It was more effective too, because you could see how uncomfortable he was. Because oh shit, these guys know that I'm not a shiny fucking awesome dude now. Like the mask is slipping a bit, right? And like, and so I think it was like probably like a little more effective than just doing it and like killing him or whatever.
I agree too. I think she killed him without killing him. She came in there, said what she needed to say, and then you saw all their faces. They're all sitting there going like, like, who do we got here in our midst? And it wasn't like they didn't know who he was. Imagine being a brand new captain and your first day on the post, and next thing you know, you're being confronted by somebody about hideous crimes, and lo and behold, no one's standing up for you. First impressions, and their first impressions of him were not good. They're sitting there.
But their first impressions really weren't. They weren't going to. I think the reason it ended up the way that it ended up is because they realized that first impressions weren't going to they weren't going to bring any action to bear.
No,
they're going to side eye this guy for the entire time that he's with them together, but ultimately nothing's going to be done. I mean, you've ruined. They're going to whisper about him, but that will be as far as it goes. And probably in 6 months, most of them will have forgotten about it because, that's the nature of the place.
It was in front of like the higher up officers though.
Yeah.
So there's a sense that like his career could be damaged by that, because we know that the higher up officers find certain things distasteful, right? And all that shit that happened back then was like distasteful, but it was a different environment. This was like a civilized town. That was like a far out like thing where they had to,
but they have the conversation when they come back to the final fire, and she asks him, what do you do when people won't, you try to change people. Do you have people like this in your culture? And he's like, yeah, every once in a while we get somebody like this, and she says, what do you do when the person won't change? And he's like, well, then, we have to kill them. So I got the impression that ultimately, it would just kind of go away. That was my impression.
No, and for the movie, I'm glad it didn't. I mean, because you sort of get a double payoff, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking too, because I mean, to me, it's like he got there before the other officer did. That was the thing he was going to try to. That's the thing he had to do. He had to beat the other officer who was evaluating him to that town, change his mind. The other officer still had yet to hit town. I can rest assured that when that one captain did hit the town, it would have been interesting to see him. It almost would have been more interesting to see her and Hawkins go at it in the officers, and then turn around and just like it was in the town, and see that other officer standing there watching all over again. Like, you haven't changed at all. You can move from town to a post. You can move from post to post. You could change your clothes from a sergeant, from a lieutenant to a captain, but you're still saying the same piece of shit that I saw back at the post. It would have been more interesting, but it would have taken away from her moment. So I can understand why that didn't happen that way, but it would have been interesting.
I think the thing that that's nice about this is you want to see people get their comeuppance, but in real life, to move past certain traumas, it's not about what happens to the other person. It's about like what you can do for yourself. And what she does is she just goes in there, she speaks her truth, and she has like this moment where she sings a song, and it's kind of a powerful moment, right? I mean, it's just singing a song like in front of all these people. It's just like, I don't know.
She's singing about her husband, wishing that her husband was still with him.
Yeah. Right. And you can see during all this how uncomfortable he is, because he tries to discredit, this whore is a drunk and lying and blah. And then And then like she's like, just that's not gonna fly, dude. I'm just gonna speak my thing, and then everyone feels her truth, you know. They don't like try to stop her and be like, oh, that drunk bitch, whatever. Like,
I like that.
They believed her, and he was uncomfortable.
No, I think exactly the perfect way to put it is like they sensed her truth, which is why none of them stood up. None of them stood up. None of them tried to evict her out of there like she's crazy or anything else. They wanted to see how this was going to unfold. They wanted to see the resolution of it. That's why nobody got up there and try to stop her from speaking or ejected her or anything else or having her arrested. I mean, he could have just sat there and said, ask her for her papers. That could have been the end of it, because she has no papers. She's still a prisoner, and technically in the court's eyes. He could have did that, but he didn't, and but it was a good moment, and she did speak her piece, and she got, she said what she said, but and then of course she leaves, and then her and Billy talk, and then Billy goes ahead and it's to the point where she's got her piece, but he hasn't had his.
Yeah,
because this killing, the killing of Hawkins and Ruse was not for her at all. That was not for her. That was for him, 100% him.
But it's also an interesting thing. In like, if just this is from this like a conceptual standpoint, like with her, you get the dichotomy of her having her personal growth moment, and like her resolution is very internal and like kind of like how people really should be. And then the other part of it is he goes in and finishes the job, but it's also didn't feel like it was super out of malice. It was almost like, though you deal with yourself, you also have to like try to make sure that other people can't harm others or whatever. So it felt like he was doing a duty, like, okay, I saw all these people get killed. It's going to continue to happen. I don't know. It felt more than just cold revenge to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna agree with you. I think that he did it almost as a service. As, like you said, when we have people in our culture that we know aren't going to change, then it's like you put down a mad dog.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. But I also think that he did it for both of them.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of he brings freedom to them both, really.
Yeah.
By just wiping these people off the table. And that doesn't necessarily mean a happy ending, or that they're going to ride off into the sunset together, which sort of does happen, sort of doesn't.
Yeah.
But that they're free now. He's not wearing Western clothes anymore.
Yeah.
He's dressed as a traditional now.
And he's got a spear, not a gun.
Yeah, he's got a spear, not a gun, not a knife. He's singing his songs, from his culture. She's singing the songs from her culture. And I think, when it finally, like I said at the beginning, when it happens on the beach, they actually find love in this very strange way. It grabbed me a lot more the second time that I saw it.
It kind of like that was a theme because that happened the first time around a campfire. Like he starts singing, talking about the blackbird and stuff.
Yeah.
And like their joint moment is really when she starts singing in Gaelic, is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh shit, Ireland, and like so they sort of bonded. They both sort of sing in their language, and they come to an understanding. And that theme is sort of brought back there at the resolution.
Yeah, which I mean, it ends ambiguously because you have to assume that they're not. This isn't a happy ending necessarily.
No, I think he was dying.
Yeah, he's dying, and she may well go back into prison.
Yeah,
or be hung. Because they've just killed 2 British soldiers, one of them an officer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're free.
Yeah,
their spirits are free.
I was glad to see the sergeant did not have nearly a quick death as Hawkins did. I mean, Yeah, he got pinned slow, and
But that's
and
the part.
he wasn't totally dead. He wasn't totally dead when they left him too. He was still struggling to breathe. I don't know why, but I just found satisfaction in that. I mean,
But
call me.
that's why, like, when he first kills Hawkins, right? That's why it didn't feel like it was just all about revenge, because he didn't go in with a big speech like "you killed my family," like people would, if they want to really just like see how fucked up you are, and now I'm gonna fuck you up.
Yeah.
He went in there and just like, well, there he is, thunk, right in the
down.
heart, didn't say a word,
Yeah.
and then went about his business to the other dude.
Yeah. Yeah. This is easily so this is one of the best films I've seen in a very long time, for sure. It's powerful. I know Mike mentioned before about the people walking out of it. That's a shame. I really am saddened by that, to see that. Maybe not necessarily surprised, but saddened. But this is just a great movie, and a brave choice for Jennifer Kent. I think a lot of people will be surprised, when you talk about the Nightingale, like I was too. Mary, I wanted to ask you this question as as a woman. I mean, were you? I know the assault scenes really bothered you. Were you surprised when I mentioned that Jennifer Kent actually wrote this movie? Did you think it was written by a male first, or had you known that Jennifer Kent had written it?
Yeah, I'm sure maybe she wrote it from something that might have happened in her life, or she knew somebody that it happened to. It was pretty brutal. It definitely was from the woman's view.
Yeah,
It was
I mean,
brutal. I don't like you were saying it's a shame they walked out. Kind of, yes, but I also don't wouldn't judge anyone for saying I just don't want to watch this. You know what I mean? This is just
no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was one of those. I had to cut it off, and maybe I should have just fast forwarded past that part. It was bugging me, but I just couldn't.
But
I was
there's
like, it's enough
There's no
for
shame.
me.
Yeah, there's not like any super strong reason why. I mean, yeah, we're supposed to sit here and discuss it, but at the same time,
Just, hey, this is one of those. This is one of those movies. Again, it's sort of like like Irreversible, right? Irreversible is it's a great movie, but is it the first thing I'm going to recommend to somebody? No, not even close. Not even close.
My son said to watch out for that one.
Irreversible.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting film, though. But yeah, definitely.
Like the Human Centipede, we watched that movie, and it's like I love them Centipede. I thought it was, I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
And you talked so much shit before you watched it,
yeah,
too.
but you're gonna let me finish. It's a great movie. It's but it's not a movie that I'm gonna go right out and not only am I not gonna like stick my hand up for it, like watch that movie. Or nor will I sit there and watch it like I'm gonna sit down and rewatch the Human Centipede. I've seen it once. I'm good. It's a good movie, but it's a movie I don't need to see again. This movie, on the other hand, I will watch again. That's a sure. That's a certainty. I
might watch it later and fast forward past that one area there.
You'll know when it's time to fast forward. Yeah.
You'll
definitely time to fast forward.
It's like the whole tone of the movie is like that scene over. I mean, it's not, they don't like graphically show that scene, but it's just like, that's the tone of the movie. It's bleak as fuck. You know what I mean? So
right.
Sometimes you don't want to I probably will never watch Requiem for a Dream again. It was a good movie. I'm never going to watch that bitch again. That depressed the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
I had enough bleak for a while. I want some good stuff, some fun stuff. Yeah.
Creepshow. Creepshow on.
You can watch
I love Creepshow.
Well,
Mary, that's so good.
Well, Mary, she's going to get to pick our next movie. I'm not sure who's hosting it. I'm not sure if Mary's going to host it or she'll have one of us host it for her, but she is going to be the host next month. Mary, why don't you tell us which movie you picked out for us to watch? I
picked out C for Me. I forgot to write down what the director's name was, but I really liked it. I enjoyed the movie a lot.
That keeps popping up on my queue on my Fire Stick homepage. Okay.
Mary's doing it. Mike. She's sending you that. She's sending you that.
Okay. Oh, is that you, Mary? Okay, is that the reason it keeps popping up on my television set?
Yes,
Okay.
That's right.
it's me.
Okay. Okay.
You will watch this movie. You.
Now,
You
what's it?
will like it.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then so Mary's gonna do July. Mike, you're gonna get August. So so I know we're only doing it once a month, but believe me, the month gets here fast.
Wait,
So
wait. Is Mary? Are you? Wait. Who's doing June then?
I'm sorry, June is gonna be Mary.
I got
and
July.
you do
I got July.
You got July. Yes, and then David will have August, and then Ben will have September.
I'm picking a comedy.
Okay. I was originally going to pick. I originally was going to pick Swallow. I said no. I'm going to.
Hilarious. I'm just kidding.
Huh?
Oh yeah,
Said
yeah. I
hilarious
remember
movie.
you sent me the trailer for that, and I'm like, oh god, maybe. Okay.
The trailer.
But after we watched Relic, I'm going like, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we shouldn't do it. It's another heavy drama. I'll do the Nightingale because I'm thinking, okay, it'll be different. It'll be
That's
and I
nice
go
and
ahead.
light.
Yeah. This is nice and
Very
funky.
light, very lighthearted.
So yeah, I don't know. I always pick the fluffy ones, right? So now you've seen See For Me is going to be for next month. That'll be on June 26th. And like I said, I'm not sure if you want to host it on your StreamYard, Mary, that's fine. If not,
I got this tablet here, and I didn't think I was gonna make it till the night. It wasn't working very good.
well,
I got a phone, but no computer.
okay. Well, I mean, one of us will be happy to make the stream, and then you come
Cool.
on in like you're here, and then you can go ahead and run the show.
Right.
Running the show. Listen, I want to thank you guys again. I say this every month. Ben knows this. He's been here from the beginning. I cannot thank you guys enough for doing this show with me. I absolutely love it. This is my very favorite thing I do on the tube. This show right here. I absolutely love it. So I can't wait for next month. Real quick, some programming notes. I will be going over and we're doing some Friday the 13th. We'll be up and running here in 10 minutes or so. I just want to let you know, too, also on June 6th, which is a Monday, me and the Cheetah, we are going on the road. We are heading to New Jersey for our very first time on Mike's stream, and that's going to be fun. We're doing our 5 guilty, what is it, 5?
Our top 5 guilty pleasure movies within horror, sci-fi, action thrillers.
And you want to come out for that. I'll be putting a banner out for that. You guys can all come over and hang out with us. I'll be sharing on my community tab and whatnot. And wait till you come see the movies that I pick. You guys will be
Shark, Killer Donuts. Drop them off real quick.
That's right. Godzilla vs. Megalon. Yeah. That's right. Or Godzilla versus Gigan. What are those two? I want to thank you guys always for coming in and doing the show. You guys in the chat, thank you so much. We hope that you will get a chance to watch the Nightingale. I'll put all the description links down below where you can get it and check it out, and then drop a comment down below. Okay, everybody, that'll be it. I will see you in about 10 minutes or less. Thanks for coming.
Bye,
and
guys.
yeah,
See you next month.
See you next month. Peace.
Bye-bye.